Hello and welcome to Module 4 in our Django series. In today's session, we will work with the Database Access API that was automatically created for us by Django in the last session when we created our models. In order to begin exploring this API, we need to invoke the Python shell. So let's go now to the command prompt. Change directory to your virtual environment directory. Activate the environment. Start VS Code so that we have our code for easy reference. Change directory to our container folder and then type in py manage.py shell to get us into the Python shell. Now you may be wondering why we didn't type in Python to access the shell. The reason is that manage.py sets the Django settings module environment variable and then passes on the Python import part to our project settings.py file to Django. Right? Now that we are inside the shell, we'll discuss how to create, update, and delete objects. We'll also talk about saving foreign key fields on our objects. We'll discuss the get method versus a filter method. And we'll also talk about limiting query sets. So let's now go back to the console. And we start by writing a simple Python function that will enable us to clear the screen simply because CLS, the Windows command, does not work with Python. So def CLS is going to be the name of the function. 2 lines of code here, import OS as an operating system, and then os.system, passing in CLS. And now every time we call this function, we'll have a clear screen. Now let's import the models. So from appname.models, import the model names. So teacher, student, grade section. To see the objects within the models, the easiest method is just type in the model name .objects.all. And of course, we're going to get an empty query set returned simply because we haven't created any student objects. So let's create a student object now. S1, that's going to be equal to, we need to specify the name of the model and then pass in the attributes and their values starting with student ID. I'm not going to put in the email ID here. We will put that in when we talk about updation of objects. So now we have an object, but is it stored in the database? And as you can see, it's not been stored. We need to call the save method on this object in order to save it to the database. So .save, but watch what happens when I call the save method. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you can see we have an integrity error because we need to set the foreign keys. As you can see in student, we have 2 foreign keys, teacher and grade section. So let's clear the screen now and let's create a grade section object. Model name is grade section and all we need to set here is grade sec ID. I'm going to just keep that as 1A. Now, if you look at the grade section model, we have a foreign key there as well, which we need to set. And for that, we need to create a teacher object. So T1 equal to name of the model is teacher. And then we need to pass in the attribute starting with teacher ID. Now, the teacher model does not have any foreign key. So this particular save should be successful. So the teacher object is saved. Now we can assign this teacher to the grade section 1 dot, we need to specify the foreign key field name and then put an equal to there, assign the teacher. Okay, we can save the grade section now and that should go through as well. And now we can set the foreign keys on the student. So S1 dot teacher ID equal to T1, right? And S1 dot grade section equal to GS1. And now we can save the student. So now we can query the student. S1 dot student name will give us a student name. S1 dot grade section will give us a grade section or the grade and section. And S1 dot teacher ID will give us a teacher assigned to the student, right? I'm going to go ahead now and create another student, right? So we have a little more data to work with. And we'll also create another teacher and another grade. So the student is created. Let's create the grade section. Now we need to create the teacher. We can save this teacher. Remember, there's no foreign key there. We can assign that teacher to GS2 and then save this grade section object. And now we can assign grade section and teacher to the student too. And save the student as well. Now you can see we have the error unique constraint field. Why is that? You can see student email there. If you come to your code, you can see we've set unique equal to true. So what's happening here? Let's call the CLS function to clear the screen. If you look at s1.studentEmail, that's a null. s2.studentEmail is also a null. They're not unique. We need to therefore set student email for both S1 and S2. So S1.studentEmail, and we need to call a save method again to save the changes. Similarly for S2, and then call a save method on S2 so that the changes are saved to the database. So now we've looked at creation and updation. What about deletion? Let's try deleting a teacher. We've got T1 dot delete to delete an object, but watch what happens when I press the enter key. You can see we have their protected error displayed, cannot delete some instances of teacher because they are referenced through protected foreign keys. And if you go to the code, you can see indeed that we have a protect option there when using the onDelete method. What this means is that we've got to delete grade section in order to delete teacher. So if we try to delete grade section, what happens? GS1 dot delete to delete that object. And again, we get a message saying cannot delete some instances of model grade section because they are referenced through restricted foreign keys. And that's, of course, in our student model. We'll have to delete the student and then delete the grade section and then delete the teacher, which makes sense, right? We can't delete a grade and section until we've deleted the students from the grade and section, and we can't delete the teacher until the grade and section is gone, right? So let's say S1 dot delete. So we've deleted the student, GS1 dot delete. So now we've deleted the student, we've deleted the grade. Can we delete the teacher? T1 dot delete. Yes, we can. I'm going to change this now to the cascade option, and we'll keep the others the same. Let's reinstate our student, our grade, and our teacher. Student, grade, teacher. Save the teacher. Assign the teacher to the grade. Save the grade. And then assign to the student the teacher and the grade. And then save the student. If you want to check, you can use the count method. Student.objects.count will give us a number of students. So now, because we've changed the models, we've got to run make migrations as well as migrate again. For that, we need to exit this shell. So exit. And now we will run make migrations. right? So that alteration has been made. And now we've got to run migrate as well. Now we can go back to the shell. So py manage.py shell. And unfortunately for us, that function will not be saved. So we've got to define it again. Right, so that's done. Now we need to import the models again as well. So from app name.models, import the model names. Let's try deleting a teacher. But first of all, we've got to get that teacher. So let's say T1 equal to teacher.objects.get. So this is the get method. Teacher ID equal to T001. Okay, so now T1 contains that teacher object. We'll talk about the filter method shortly. Let's try now to delete this teacher and see what happens. And you can see that we cannot delete teacher. So now try to delete the grade section. Let's clear the screen. GS1 equal to grade section name of the model dot objects dot get, and we need to specify which grade section we want. So grade sec ID equal to 1A. Right? So now we have GS1 there. Let's try to delete that. And again, you can see we have that restricted error displayed. Right? What if we change all of them to cascade? What do you think will happen? Now all have the cascade option on delete. We need to run migrations again, as I said. So exit the shell. Right? And then py manage.py migrate to apply the changes. Now let's go back to the shell. So py manage.py shell. And of course, we need to recreate our CLS function. And we need to import the models. Right? Now, if we try to delete the teacher, but of course, we need to get that teacher object first. So T1 equal to teacher.objects.get teacher ID equal to T001. Right, so we have that object T1.delete. And you see, because we've used a cascade option, not only the teacher is deleted, but also the student and the grade section. Right, so now you understand how cascade works. Let's play around a little more with the onDelete method. Change this to restrict and keep this as cascade. So let's now exit the shell and we need to run make migration. So, and then of course run migrate. And now let's go back to the shell. We've got to import the models again. Right? Now let's work with student S002 because student S001 is deleted. So if you say student.objects.all, you should see just one object there. Right? What about teacher? And we have that second teacher there. And then grade section. And we have the second grade section. Right? So let's get this second teacher into T2, teacher.objects.get teacher ID equal to T002. Now, instead of using teacher ID, a shorter method is to use PK for primary key. So I can say here PK equal to T002 and I will get the same result. Now that we have that teacher, Let's try deleting this teacher. And you can see that the student, the grade section, and the teacher are deleted. So the bottom line is, if the object, we are deleting the teacher in this case, is referenced through the cascade option in one model, and then using the restrict option in another, that object, that's the teacher object in our case, will be deleted, as well as the objects that reference it. If you have any questions, you can post in the comments. Let's now discuss get versus filter. But for that, we'll need to reinstate our objects. So now we have the two grades, teachers and students, right? So student.objects.count, it shows we have two. Right, so coming to the get versus filter, when I use the get, so for example, student1 equal to student.objects.get, and we can use pk here, equal to s001, right? So we have student1 there. We can access the different attributes as well. Student1.email, or rather student email is the name of the field, and you can get the student email, right? Similarly, student1.student DOB, or date of birth, gives us a date of birth. But watch what happens when I use the filter method. With filter, we cannot really access the attributes, and therefore filter cannot be used for updation. But we can use filter to delete the object. We've got student filtered, s filtered, just to change that variable name, equal to dot delete student.objects.count should give us only one. So that's about get versus filter. So now let's talk about limiting query sets. I'm going to reinstate the student we deleted. Coming back to limiting query sets, we can do something like this. We can say student.objects.all, and we can use Python slicing here. So we can say, give me the student after the first one. And now you can see it gives me S001. If you go to student.objects.all, you can see the second student is indeed S001. Or you can also ask for just the first student. So instead of specifying it like this, we can put that colon first and then the 1 as center. Now you get only the first student. Right, so that's possible. You can also use the order by method. And so we can say here, student.objects.order by, we need to specify the attribute by which we want them ordered. The student ID, and there you have them ordered. Query sets are lazy. What does that mean? We've already seen this. We created an object, but it wasn't saved in the database until we call the save method. So you may put in as many attributes as you like and assign them values, but unless you call the save method, the object is not going to be saved. Moving on now to filters, and we'll also talk about chaining filters. The filters we'll talk about are exclude, starts with and ends with, I starts with and I ends with, contains and I contains. So let's now go back to the shell. Right, for this to make sense, we'll add another student and assign the student to one of the existing teachers. Now we should have 3 student objects. Let's use the exclude filter. Query1 equal to dot exclude. And here we're going to specify student name equal to the last one we added. Result of query 1 is just that one student. So the exclude is leaving out the second student based on what we specified. So now let's look at starts with and ends with. For that, I'm going to add another student. Just call that S4. right? So we have another student there with the same first name. So now using starts with and ends with, you say query 2 equal to student dot objects dot filter student name, and when we're using starts with, we need to use a double underscore. So dunder starts with equal to Becky, and we're going to use the exclude here, exclude student name, and here we use ends with, and again with ends with we need to use double underscore. So dunder ends with equal to query 2 returns S004. Now let's look at contains and I contains. So query 3 equal to student name, and again you've got to use double underscore. So dunder contains equal to, okay, so query 3 should return S001. What about I contains? So query 4 equal to student name dunder or double underscore I contains equal to, let's put in a lowercase there. So I contains is case insensitive. So if I change this to a capital Sanders, query 4 will still return to me as 001. Contains is case sensitive. So let's test that. Let's go to query 3 and put in lowercase here. That's lowercase s. And now let's check the contents of query 3. So now you can see that although we've used lowercase s, contains has behaved like it's case insensitive. And so it's important to keep in mind that contains behaves like I contains when we're using SQLite. The next filters we talk about are exact and I exact. So going back to our shell, so for exact first, we say query 5 equal to student name dunder. So again, you've got to use a double underscore, exact equal to, I'm going to put in just the first name and see what that gives us. And query 5 is blank. So we've got to specify the entire name, right? The exact name as it is stored. And then query 5 gives us the student. What about I exact? Let's put that in query 6 equal to student dot objects dot filter student underscore name dunder I exact equal to, and here we can put in the name in lowercase. Query 6 returns as a student. Let's talk about how to add str methods to the models. What is the use of this str methods? If you look at our console, the student return is showing us just the ID. Wouldn't it be better if we saw the name? And that's the idea behind having these str methods, right? So come now to your code, and for teacher, we start with that. Put in def dunder str dunder. The argument is self. And here we say return self dot teacher name. We'll do the same for student, right? Now, we don't need to run migrations again, but we do need to exit the shell and then come back in for this to take effect. Py manage.py shell. And of course, we've got to redefine our function cls Now we've got to import the models as well. So from app name dot models import, right? And now let's see what happens when we access a student. S1, and it shows us a student name. Isn't that much better? The same thing you can do with filter. S2 then will show us a student name, right? Let's add another custom method to our model, and that's going to be on the student model. Name of the function is born before 2020. It's going to take self as argument and then return self dot student date of birth dot year less than 2020. So now again, we don't need to run migrations or migrate for that matter, but we do need to exit the shell and come back in again. So py manage.py shell, and we need to import the models. So from the app name dot models import and the model names. We also need to import date time, and now we can say student 1 equal to student dot objects dot get pk equal to, and then we can check student 1 dot born before 2020, and that's true, right? Because student 1 dot student dob is 2019. And you can test this out with the other student objects as well. That ends our session for today. In the next session, we'll discuss the admin interface, which, as you know, is the most loved and the most powerful part of the Django framework. Till then, take care. Bye.